Welcome everybody, and welcome to The Discarded Compass. And the guest we have today is Jim Newman, a non-dual teacher as such, and Jim has a website as well, before I forget, simplythis.com, and Jim also does weekend retreats and also Zoom meetings. Jim, welcome.
Thanks. Hey, good, thanks. Yourself?
Good, thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, I stumbled upon your teaching, and I don't think you call it teaching, do you?
No, it's not a teaching.
It's not a teaching. It's
no, well,
but the way you put it across, sometimes it's got that extra sort of penetration to the mind, that extra something that I often hear in some teachers.
oh, yeah.
How did you stumble upon all this? What happened?
How did I stumble upon it?
Yeah, this way of life.
Well, I mean, it was this way of life. Unwillingly. The whole thing was completely unwilling. There was obviously an openness to it, but there was no conception or idea of what this was or what was longed for.
So that would make me think, I'll be the devil's advocate here, that you didn't really know what you were looking for?
Well, nobody, I mean, in the end, what we're sharing is that this is what's longed for. This without the need for it to become. And this can't be sought because it is already. So all seeking is of something else. And all seeking, it comes back to knowing, which is where teachings come in. And so the experience of separation is seeking something it can know and something it can have. What can't be found is what's never lost, which is this.
That leaves the mind with relatively very little to do.
Yeah, there's actually no way to have a discussion about this message or what's being shared. It's got a couple of very basic ideas, and there can be a discussion back and forth about it, about those ideas, but there's no real conversation to have because it's just this. I mean, it's just this. That's all that's being said. That's all that's being pointed to. That's the whole suggestion of it, that this is everything. What's not obvious to the energy of separation is this is also nothing.
To comprehend, for the mind to comprehend that this is also nothing is it's just too much.
Well, as a concept, it's easy. You know, I mean, it's a word,
it's a
concept.
Mental nothing, yeah.
It's a mental nothing. But as a reality, it can't be conceived of. That's why that experience of separation is searching. Because it's looking for something that it can conceive of, it can know. That's why it goes to teachings. Because teachings offer something to know to the individual that's seeking, which is exactly what it wants to hear. Yes, there's something wrong, either with you or with the world. And yes, there's something you can do about it. And if you try hard enough, you can find what's missing. Of course, that's pointing to an exclusive freedom, a personal freedom, because it has to do with the individual that could or couldn't find it. And this message isn't about a personal or exclusive freedom. It's about a freedom that's already everything.
And the thing about it is, if there was a so-called freedom to get, it would already have been found.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, if there was an ultimate freedom or an ultimate place to reach that was really ultimate, it would have happened already.
I don't understand
whatever that might be. You know, it's just that's not what I'm saying. Is probably another. It's another stretch of the mind trying to conceptualize the search. I mean, there's something for me for such the feeling of freedom, the idea of freedom. It cannot be captured or boxed up because it wouldn't be freedom. That's what I mean. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
It would be something else. Something
personal.
Yeah, something personal.
If I could find it, it would be personal. If it depends upon actions of an individual, then it will be related to the actions of the individual, which it depends upon. And it'll be in that way limited. What kind of freedom would that be?
Yeah.
A limited freedom. I guess that's what you meant.
Yeah, a limited freedom. That hits
Yeah.
that's the right note. Yeah, yeah.
It's an oxymoron.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you got someone looking for limited freedom through maybe ignorance, and it's nobody's fault. This happens from an early age. We're conditioned, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's not... What I'm talking about isn't conditioning. The experience
No.
of separation isn't the result of conditioning.
What is the result of separation?
It's the result of an experience that I am, that there's some knower inside the body, that this position that the body seems to have is real, and it's separate from all the other apparent things in the appearance. So I am real, and everything happening is real. That's the experience of separation, and that is completely illusory.
So what happened for you to see this? I mean...
It's not actually something happening, it's something that stops happening. And a couple of interesting things about that. One is the ending of that happening comes with a big glowing sign of this is absolutely unimportant and not worth mentioning. And the next bit that it comes along with is this is the end of something that never happened. So there's no way to put it into a context. There's no way to put the end of what's not happening into a system or into a continuum of this happened and then that happened. Because it's the breaking down of that real continuum that relates to me, that is the revelation that everything is already unconditionally free.
Did that falling away happen for you, Jim? What happened?
Falling away.
That falling away of what wasn't real as such.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happened to you when that happened?
Well, in the end, what the revelation is, this is nothing. Now, there's a story that goes along with it, but as we said, it's just really a story. Just like awakening is a story or liberation is a story, because this is liberation. Nobody ever finds liberation in the future or somewhere else or because of anything. If liberation is revealed, it's revealed to always be, to already be, not to have been found. But there was a dream of losing it. So how do you put that into a story?
It's impossible.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit.
It's not even a point to be.
No, no.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the individual seeking, because the entire, let's say, story is just one surprise of loss, which isn't a loss because it wasn't had, after another. It's impossible to conceive that this appearance is not a part of a continuum. It's impossible to conceive that the appearance has no reality to it. It's impossible to conceive that the past or the future is only this appearing as a past in the future. There's no rational logic to it at all.
And free will would be absolutely a ridiculous concept as well.
Well, I mean, there's choice. The brain chooses, obviously. But there's no one that does that.
The thinker is the thought, is it?
No. The thinking is just simply thinking. The separation, the energy of I amness, is the owner of everything. So it owns thoughts, and thereby makes it seem like thoughts are the problems. It also owns emotions. And so it seems like emotions and thoughts are the problem. They aren't a problem. The problem is that they're owned by an experience that says there's a good and bad and a right and wrong, an entire construct of my journey of how I'm going to find what I feel is missing. That's when it becomes a problem, because within that construct, some thoughts and feelings aren't appropriate. So that becomes then a problem. And then I have to do something about it. That's the dream.
There's suffering and there's trying to find a way out.
Yeah.
And that usually leads seekers on a spiritual path.
or money path or
Oh, yeah.
whatever. I mean, the energy of separation is seeking itself. So spirituality is the same as any other seeking.
So, what can be done for someone that realizes they're actually trying to find what they are? I mean, they can actually mentally know that,
Yeah.
but that won't do any good either.
Well, how? You tell me what could be done for this to be more this.
There's nothing could be done, Jim.
Well, that's sort of the message.
Yeah.
Because what's covered over by the experience of separation is that this is unconditionally free already. It has no needs, intrinsically, no needs to become.
So this dreamlike appearance must have started sometime, as such, would be the usual way of looking at it.
We're talking about the dream of the individual or
This
the
dream
body.
of even the individual, the world, the whole thing. I mean, the body comes from the ground. The body is food. The body comes from nature. Anyway, it's all the one thing,
Yeah.
one appearance, one energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that energy, I mean, I'm talking probably something about what the mind won't be able to understand, but I'm just trying to go down the rabbit holes. But that energy must have started sometime.
Well, sort of, because this is the beginning of that and the end of it simultaneously.
It's just astounding to...
Yeah, isn't it awesome? Yeah. It's just so free.
Yeah. There's nothing happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try and think of something to say, and it's just,
Yeah. Yeah. That's all right.
and there's an absolute okayness. There's not even an okayness. You see, trying to even label the freedom is an absolute mistake as well.
Well,
There's no
the thing is, it is already everything. Okay or not okay, or the experience of separation is freedom appearing as the experience of separation. Seeking is freedom seeking.
And where does God fit in all this?
Well, you can call it God.
Could you? Could you call this
Yeah.
God? The whole thing?
Yeah, you call it anything. Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Yeah. God, pizza, life, aliveness, beingness.
Yeah. Everything is allowed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
Obviously.
freedom.
Yeah.
And then people try and capture that life.
Yeah.
And they try and box it up and even make religions about it and rules and regulations, and then
Yeah.
you're getting into mind again, aren't you? It's quite fascinating. The whole cycle is quite fascinating, what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you even had Jesus, was going about probably saying, the same thing as you're saying in some way, maybe. And they made a religion about him,
Yeah.
a business, and it all got probably lost.
You can't make sense of what's being pointed to. It doesn't make sense in the end. So if someone hears it and understands it, that will then be something that seems to be knowable. So it's obvious that all is purity. There's just purity. Now, there might be somebody that listens to this and says, but I don't know that this is all purity. So there must be a difference between the speaker and me. So I have to do something to find the purity that the speaker is talking about. That's a religion. Because the statement is, everything is purity. But of course that doesn't give the individual, the seeker, anything to do or anything to have. So it has to turn it into something it can understand. Something that makes sense to it. Because it's on a journey, my life, called my life. No. There's nothing right or wrong with any of it.
Yeah. And then you get the enlightened being as such, and the bank owner or the bank robber, and there's no difference whatsoever, is there, in the three as such?
Well, I mean, in some sense, they're different because you can define them, but they're both what is. They're both freedom appearing as those actions or those things.
So enlightenment is the booby prize, yeah?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, you can say that because nobody gets anything. There's nothing to get, and there's nothing really lost. It's really a surprise. The whole process. It's not a process, but the whole thing, the whole revelation is really just an endless surprise. Because it sounds like, I know it because I talk to people, and it sounds like this knows what it's talking about and this has what it's talking about. Because the assumption is that's the only way that this shift could happen. But really, this doesn't have a clue. That's the point of it.
That makes sense.
So there's nothing to get. Meaning there's no difference between us or anyone.
Yeah, they think you have something that but there's no you to have anything.
No,
as such.
No, they hope. They hope I have something.
Hope is terrible, isn't it?
It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst, yeah. It means not now.
God, it's terrible, yeah.
Yeah.
To hope. Hope is sold to lots, in things. But I won't get down that what's so many things that are wrong with the spiritual search and things like that. But there's an authenticity about the direct teaching as such, about the direct pointedness of a message that's present all the time when it's delivered.
Yeah.
And there's something really attractive in someone hearing that be attracted to a certain teacher. What is that resonance, that identification that people get?
Well, it's just what you said. I don't know about it. I'm not sure what you mean by identification, but resonance. It can be heard, and somewhere it's heard. Now, that separate individual, that separate experience, never hears what's being said. If it does, it thinks it's something that it needs to know or do something about. But they can be heard, and it's not the individual that hears it by something else.
Then there's nothing to be said, is there?
No, it's so simple. The message is, the simplicity of it is astounding. And it's undeniable. It seems so undeniable. If there's an openness, it's just so undeniable that this is already everything.
So people would say that there's the working mind and the thinking mind.
Okay.
Like there'd be English spoken here, there are preferences in the body, there's preferences for this, that and the other.
Yeah.
That would be what would I assume to be the working mind as such.
Okay.
Would I be right there?
I don't know what you mean by working mind. What we're talking about here doesn't require any sort of differentiation of working mind or not working mind. So for me, there's thoughts. And thoughts are there's thoughts and feelings, and that's just what seems to arise. As we talked about before, the difficulty is when I'm on a journey to go somewhere, then thoughts become something that belong to me, which I have to deal with. But really, nobody needs... The individual's trying to work this out. It's trying to find something. More, if nothing else, just more. It's trying to work it out, how to get more. And in the end, what's revealed is nothing can be or needs to be worked out. That the whole construct, energy of trying to work it out comes from an illusory experience of separation.
And all labels mean nothing as well.
Well, they mean what they mean, but there's nothing behind the appearance. So the individual, that experience of separation, is looking for, it's actually looking for something for itself. It doesn't actually know what's longed for behind the need of the next experience, the next better experience. But what's really longed for is the mystery. And the mystery is there's nothing behind this. It doesn't come from anywhere, and it's not going anywhere. What that does is it leaves everything simply as it is. So a label is just simply a label. It means whatever it means, but it doesn't mean anything else. For the individual, because it knows this, it loses or seems to have lost the mystery. So really what it's longing for is the mystery, and so it sees it behind everything. There's always something else going on, and that something else is the hope that I can find what's hidden. And what's hidden isn't hidden. It's only hidden because I think I know, or I experience, I know what this is. And that makes it seem like it's solid and real. And the mystery seems to then be pushed behind, somewhere else, hidden. Whereas this is the mystery. It's nothing's hidden. Already, nothing needs to happen for this be the mystery.
And then usually a mystery is for us to experience a mystery, which is back into mind again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the individual wants to experience the mystery. Experience in that sense, what I'm saying is knowing. It wants to know. It feels like it has to. It comes up with the experience that something that I am in control, and I control by interacting with the appearance of the world, or whatever you want to call it, through my knowledge or through my experience. So it feels like it's going to solve it by knowing enough, getting enough. And it just never happens because what it's trying to overcome is separation, and there isn't any. It's an illusion.
When it comes to the ego, what is the ego? Is it
I don't know.
Contracted energy, or
I don't know what the word ego means.
Yeah.
For me, the ego, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we had spoken a year ago, and somehow all the things that we had talked about a year ago came up. You might call that ego. That somehow those memories came up of what we talked about. I don't know what the ego is. For me, when we talk about this energetic separation, the contracted energy that assumes a here I amness, I don't normally call that ego.
what knows this mystery?
We've already been through this. Nothing.
Nothing.
That's the point.
And it's not a mental nothing, is it, Jim? Like
No.
for years I was trying to grasp a mental nothing
Yeah.
until it dawned on me that this was conceptualization.
Yeah. No, but like this is nothing. The whole appearance is actually nothing. Appearing.
I can't grasp that now. That's
No, I can't grasp that.
No.
That's the whole point.
But how do you know it?
What? Don't. It's the same. It's the same as that memory I had with the lady on the phone.
Okay.
It just arises. It just is obvious. Nothing walks around holding on to it or knowing it. But whenever there's whatever, it's a response. It's a recognition. But it's obvious in the sense that it's not. What's the word? Reflected. It's not a reflected understanding. It's obvious. It's direct. Without being direct because there's no distance to it.
It's just too much for the mind. It's just it grinds to a halt, and
Yeah.
people trying to get this won't never you never ever get it. It's a terrible
No.
message.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. No one could want this.
because they don't know what they want, really, do they? I mean,
Well, the individual wants more.
Of what? I mean,
More, just more. And more for the individual, because you can't actually add anything to yourself. What it's trying to add is more knowing. It just tries to add more knowing, which is another word for experience. So more experience, more knowing, just more and more and more. Because at some point, the idea is if I know enough, it'll be enough. I won't need to know anymore. What's not obvious is the initial knowing requires knowing. Knowing isn't the satisfaction or the fulfillment. It's a mild satisfaction which then demands the next knowing to support itself.
so there actually isn't, or ever has been, any knowing.
Well, I mean, this knows where the car is.
Yeah, but there's no point
But that's-
in that. There's no end and start point in that knowing.
Exactly.
I'm just going to have to try and find things to talk about now.
I'm sorry, I see you struggling. It seems the message is so clear.
And I'm trying to be honest.
It's so simple.
Here, you know?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Like, but there are fascinating time. The illusion of time seems to be interesting
Yeah.
to seeing through things. Yeah.
Well, so I'm not talking about seeing through things. That's not the message. And here, the only illusion, so the only thing that really isn't happening, is that knowing center continuity called me. That's the only thing that's really not happening. Everything else seems to be happening. So there seems to be time. We can talk about writing emails a few days ago or whenever it was we wrote emails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Not really, no. Nothing really happens. This isn't really happening. But that's not a limit. That's not a restriction. Okay. That's a boundlessness.
But there has to be something that carries
No, there isn't.
Constantly.
Nah, there isn't. Nothing's being carried. And there isn't any constant.
But what about the constant nothing?
There isn't a constant nothing. The constant nothing. The constant nothing. What's the biggest non-number you know?
I know, a real zero.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then,
There's really no question.
Yeah, and then an idea will come up, and it's like, that's interesting. And it's like, ask him that. And it goes, okay.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
And even, but there seems to be a boxing in the mind. A mind, it kind of grasps a point and an end in a concept. Yeah. And there are no starts and ends in anything, which probably means, just by an intuitive guess, that there's no start and end in the whole thing.
This is the start and the end.
That's amazing to actually...
Yeah.
The start and the end, like, that means everything's happening and not happening at the same time. Yes.
And that's obvious. If there's a simplicity, isn't it?
I'm asking you.
Seems that way to me.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's sort of easy to point out the limits of experience, because if I say, show me something that's not this.
Show you something that's not this.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So what does that mean? If there's nothing other than this, then what is this? It seems to be happening, but there's nothing other than it. So it is and it isn't.
That's That's good.
So it's the
point.
beginning and end.
Very good, yeah. That's not this. And then the mind is always trying to come up with something that's not this.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
But you can't come up with anything that's not this.
No. And by the way, that's just a mind game. It doesn't help.
No.
But it does point out the limits of the experience of the individual that thinks that it was born, it lived, had a life, which led to this.
Can you help anybody, or have you ever helped anyone?
No.
I mean,
No. There isn't anybody to help.
you can't help anyone.
No.
That's terrible.
Now, what can happen is listening to this is there can be a contracted energy, a restricted need to become that can loosen up with all sorts of beliefs that one gathers around to make sense out of the world for itself. Some of those can also be lost. There can be a relaxation that comes into the body.
And is there an advantage in that as such?
I mean, in the sense that it's more comfortable to be relaxed than not relaxed, yeah?
Hearing that, it seems that the neti-neti approach helps.
Who would say it?
Sorry? Who would say it?
Who would say it? The only one that would want to negate is the one that thinks there's something to negate. There isn't anything to negate. There is already no thing. Negating is just part of the story of me saying that's not it. But there isn't anything that's not it. Even the experience of separation is it.
So listening, it's like I get the feeling that it's a negation, okay? But it really isn't a negation either, is it?
No. It's complete and absolute unconditionality. It just undermines the conditions of the individual that say that certain things are good and bad and right and wrong, meaningful, needed. And pointing that out can negate the experiential need that something needs to happen for this to be whole or complete. But nobody does that. Nobody says it and nobody hears it. It's just said and it's just heard.
And whole and completeness has always been the case anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say always, but it is the case. There is only this, and it is whole and complete. Yeah. Without any demand at all.
That thing of not trying to describe what is not this. That's a good way. That's a good pointer, or such to. You can never be described what isn't this, and people look for what's not this.
They live in what's not this. That's the whole experience of the individual is not this. It must be something else. That's the whole experience. It has to find something which is hidden.
What about in deep sleep? When somebody's in deep sleep, they reckon that's what you really are, you know? You're there, but you don't know you're there.
I don't know.
Is that part of realization as such, that you're going to be here and not know you're here, or some wonderful thing might happen? You know, usually people try and search for this experience of enlightenment, and you know, but all these teachings and ideas and routes to enlightenment are really a route to nothing, really, are they?
Well, actually, I would actually say it's a route to something. They're all about something. It's all about me finding something. It's all confirming that this isn't it, and there is a way for it to become. There is something that needs to happen for it to find what seems to be lost. That enlightenment is personal, and it has it has something to do with what you do or don't do. That's a dream.
It's too much for a seeker, for someone that really wants to find things.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yeah, it is.
It's which is good or bad news. It's not really good or bad news.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The whole appearance, including seeking and teachings and all the rest of it, is already unconditionally free. There is no need for it to become anything. And that's one for me, one sort of key aspect of what's being shared is that it has no intention to change anything. It's not directed to anyone. It's not a teaching or a message of becoming anything. So it's nothing in it for anyone. It points out that a priori, this is already unconditional.
And there are no expectations either.
Expectations are just freedom appearing as expectations. I find it very difficult to draw a line about what does and doesn't arise. The only thing that doesn't arise when it's recognized that there never was anyone is someone. That doesn't arise.
Someone that doesn't arise.
No, someone, the experience of separation, doesn't arise.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the only thing that doesn't arise when there's no one. But any emotions or thoughts or feelings, it doesn't seem like there's any limit. It's just there's no one left that takes ownership.
Where would the feeling of you being located in the body be, as such?
There isn't a location in the body. There's feelings in the body, thoughts, but there isn't anyone in the body.
There's just an energy.
Well, there's only, if you want to talk about energy, all there is energy. It's all energy.
Which can't be defined.
Well, it's everything, so you couldn't get outside of it to point a finger at it.
So this is it. This is what spins the wheels for people.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it spins the wheel because the experience is that something needs to be found. There is something missing or something wrong that needs to be fixed or found. And it's up to me to do it. That's the dream.
There's nothing wrong or right with anything.
No. Well, there isn't anything actually really happening for it to have a real context to be made wrong or right. Wrong or right is just part of the story of me. Those are the signposts to know that I'm getting closer or further away from what I think is the right way to be.
And there's a start and an end point again, yeah?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Jim, I've no more to think of anything.
You've done very well, I'll have to say.
I know, I thought I'd done very well.
In the first 5 minutes, I thought, oops, he's done. You kept on.
I tell you, it was, I was just trying to come up with what would people ask him?
Yeah.
But
it's lovely to see how the message can just be heard. And there's just that need for anything to happen just falls away.
Suffering stops for people, doesn't it, really?
But if you call seeking suffering, yeah. Mm. But pain still arises. Thoughts arise. The me will take the pain and it will put it into its context of what it means to it in the future and all of that, which is another form of seeking, the whole structure of seeking. So pain is no longer free to be pain. So when there's no one left, then pain is just simply pain. Freedom, paining.
It seems like the truth, if we could call it that there's just this happening for no one. No?
I wouldn't call it truth. It sounds like a thing. It sounds like something you could know.
Anything isn't it or not it?
There isn't any. Well, that's the thing. If there's a truth and there's an untruth, what would be the untruth?
There's no untruth either.
No. There's just what's arising. There's no handrails, no guardrails.
Yeah.
It's just chaos.
That's the thing. I often think people want freedom. I don't think so.
No. One of the things that happened here is when that contracted energy fell away, there was the revelation that was absolutely not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That ignorance is truly bliss. And once it's gone, once it's recognized, it's over. You're in it. It's done. It'll never get back to solid again.
Be careful what you ask for, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's got nothing to do with you, really, in the end. because no one would have asked for it. Nobody would ask for it.
It's too much for the mind. Just can't. The mind just stops.
Yeah.
Just impossible.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do or not do.
Totally. There's no one to make the choice. Doing and not doing seem to happen, but no one chooses.
That's it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to talk about,
isn't it? The wonderment, the freedom, especially that the freedom as such.
Yeah.
It's sort of exhilarating, and I'd be wondering why is that? I don't know why that is, but it is.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well, it's wild. It's absolutely wild.
And that's kind of coming through in my life, and it's as such, you know. There's a constant. You can't hang your hat anywhere. It's a constant. Of life, and it's like whoa, you know.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. And there's no start or end in it, so there's nothing. That's the thing. The freedom in itself, it can't be got, it can't be captured, it can't be made anything. So it's a continuous sort of wild ride, you know. It's a sort of, I'm talking like a poet now, but
yeah, it is very poetic. Yeah. It's not continuous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Continuous. It's not continuous. You see, this is it. What is that then? What is that feeling of continuity?
Oh, that there's really something happening. That this is a part of real time. That's the dream of me, is that I live in real time. I'm real, everything else is real, time's real, space is real. And I'm really in charge.
So, there's nobody steering the ship?
No, there's nobody steering the ship. It's terrifying. For me, for the individual. Already. That's not a conditional nobody steering the ship. It's already nobody steering the ship. The individual thinks that what we're talking about here is something that needs to happen, and it'll happen in the future. Whereas really what's being suggested is this is nobody steering the ship already, and nothing needs to happen for that.
And a question will come and an answer will happen, and then it's...
Yeah. Well, whatever. It's just what seems to happen.
And is there nothing happening? Is that it?
No. It is actually nothing which is happening. So it's appearing to happen. And it's not a nothingness. There's not like this endless nothingness that's just appearing as this. This is actually nothing. It's nothing handing or facing or wording, talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm worn out.
Yeah, that's all right. Very nice, lovely conversation.
Yeah,
deep, nice.
Really trying to come up with, but there's some beautiful pointers in there, Jim.
Well, what I said was, show me something that isn't this. All there is nothing. This is no thing, thinging, appearing, being. And it's not Just to be clear, that's not a nothing that's becoming this, that this is actually nothing.
It's just, it's
Yeah,
like,
it
yeah,
is. Yeah. Simple.
It's not even simply understood, is it? It's just,
No.
even simple is too much, it's too complicated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you think there'd be nothing to be talked about, and then you start talking about it again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
and that's even some sort of proof that all there is what's continuously happening, maybe, or just, I've no idea
Well,
what I'm talking
for me, it's like spontaneity. You're talking about
Spontaneity.
spontaneity. And I think that's a good word for this. You could just say this is spontaneous. All there is spontaneous. Yeah.
There's no beginning or end. It's like too much.
Yeah, I know. It's too much for that need for it to become something.
There's no time, like.
Well, there seems to be.
Seems to be.
But it's this appearing as time. There's no real time. There's nothing really happening.
I think I'm cooked.
Oh, well done.
I lasted for 52 minutes.
Hey, wow, really? Well, that's very good. Lasted 52 minutes in the ring with Jim Newman.
Yeah. It's been really enjoyable, Jim, honestly, and it's a wonderful thing, as you say. It's just so wonderful to
Yeah.
whatever happens here is just what happens for no one. And you do weekend retreats and things and Zoom meetings and such.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And your website is simplythis.com. Simplythis.com.
Yeah.
I'll
That's
put it in the description below. And if
Thanks.
anybody wants to donate to keep the podcast going, please do. Jim Newman, it's been wonderful having you on Discard a Compass. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's been great. Thanks.
And take care, and hopefully we'll see you around.
Yeah. Great.
That ship
Thanks.
might pull in and we
Yeah.
have a coffee or something.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's do it.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.